If only our task were simply to create a little Jewish state on a small patch of land which connects 3 continents, Asia, Africa, and Europe, then dayenu. That would be enough. But the task given to this little people called Bnei Israel, the descendants of our patriarch Israel, is much more than that. Our God-given task is to take God's words of Torah, to share them with all humanity so that they can join us together in building a peaceful and purposeful world. Our sages taught that Torah is the blueprint by which God created the universe. God consulted with Torah and created the universe. And once that work was done, at Mount Sinai, those blueprints were entrusted to us so that we might study and interpret these words and share them with all the families of the earth so that they too can work to create a more perfect world. How do we do this? Who will be our role model? Those who join me for Shabbat morning Torah study each week know that I have turned my attention to this character of Bezalel, which we heard a little bit about. According to the lengthy series of chapters which we've just completed today, there is one man who knows how to construct a universe, not as God did, out of nothing, but only as human beings can do, out of something. His name was Bezalel, which means in the shadow of God. Bezalel's assignment was to be the chief architect of the Mishkan, that portable sanctuary constructed in the wilderness. Its elaborate design allowed for its portability throughout our 40 years of wilderness wanderings. And it feels we are wandering again. And so we turn to Bezalel and say, what can we learn from him? About him it is written, Va'amalei oto ruach Elohim b'chochma uvitvuna uvida'at. God said to Moses, see, I have singled out by name Bezalel. I have endowed him with the divine spirit of wisdom, with understanding, and with knowledge. The 11th century master commentator Rashi wonders about these 3 words, chokhmah, tvuna, and da'at. He wonders what could be the difference between them. They sound synonymous. But since no ink is wasted in Torah because every letter is placed deliberately, those 3 words must stand for 3 different kinds of wisdom, 3 different categories of wisdom. And that's what I'd like to talk about briefly today. First, there is chokhmah. This is the kind of wisdom, Rashi says, that a person hears from others and learns and integrates as their own. This is an intellectual exercise of acquiring facts and skills from others, from experts, from teachers, from coaches, from mentors, and then applying what we have learned to know how the world works and how it operates. Next, there is binah, or tvuna, understanding. And this is, Rashi says, the kind of understanding that comes through emotional intelligence. We could call this heart wisdom. And finally, the 3rd category, da'at, is the kind of knowing that comes through divine inspiration, a kind of enlightenment that springs from faith and reinforces core values and core truths. The ancient rabbis who constructed our prayer book took up these 3 categories of wisdom, chokhmah, binah, and da'at, these 3 attributes of Bezalel, and wove them together in our daily liturgy. Just as Bezalel was tasked with constructing the Mishkan, this microcosm of the universe, so are we. And so we ask God to bless us with the same. Ata chonein la'adam da'at u'melamed le'enosh binah. Chonenu me'itcha chokhmah, binah, v'da'at. Baruch ata Adonai, praised are you, O God. Chonein hada'at, praised are you, O God, who grants us all kinds of wisdom. So we ask for these each and every day, during the week, but it seems that some days and some centuries we need them more than others. The weariness we are feeling these days is primarily not from what we know, but from what we don't know. When we know and understand, we are more likely to feel confident and clear, empowered, energized, focused, and we get to work, like Bezalel and his team. But if you are feeling exhausted, if you are weighed down by the news of the day, it's likely because of what we don't know. It's likely because of what we don't understand. We don't know if we can trust heads of state. We don't know where the unleashed hatred is coming from or why it is sweeping over the world so swiftly. We don't know if we are at the beginning, middle, or end of this trying time. This not knowing is overwhelming. This not knowing is disorienting. This not knowing is confusing. So let me lift up 3 examples of increasing our knowing based on the 3 categories, chokhmah, binah, and da'at. First, there is chokhmah about studying up, acquiring data, knowing the facts. That means finding reliable resources, not TikTok. It means using discernment to know what's what, to depend on experts in the fields of discerning. And there is, by rabbinic wordplay, an insight about the word itself, chokhmah. If you can picture how it's spelled, chet, chaf, mem, hey, if you reverse the first 2 letters and you break the word in half, you get 2 little words, koach, ma. Koach, ma, the strength of asking what. Asking why can be paralyzing. Asking why can be demoralizing. But asking what can be galvanizing. Noah, when he came out from the ark and saw the destruction of the world by flood, he was paralyzed by asking why. And so he turned to wine to dull his senses, and he lost his way, and that was the end of his leadership. But when we say koach ma, there is strength in asking what kinds of questions lead to such strength? What can I do? What can I do to make a difference? Now what? What Torah might I turn to? What mitzvot might I lift up? What advocacy might I perform? And we turn this kind of insight to honor those who were murdered on October 7th, to honor those who were abducted, to honor the thousands still evacuated from their homes along the northern and southern borders, to honor our ancestors and those among us who came to Canada, to this good country, with great dreams of protection and freedom. And yes, when we ask koach ma, when we search for the strength in asking the questions of what must be done, let it also be asked in a way that will honor the children and any other innocents who are caught in the crossfire of Gaza. Binah, the second category of wisdom. This is the kind of wisdom that comes from the heart, what we call now emotional intelligence. And the rabbis of the Talmud teach, you may have heard this before, that before a child is born, the child is taught all the mysteries of the universe, all of Torah. And just before the baby is born, an angel named Lila comes and kisses us right here, leaving a little mark as a reminder to say, with this kiss, I've taken it all away from your memory bank, and you, little one, have to learn it for yourself all over again. This is the kind of understanding that comes from the heart, and to illustrate an example, I turn to the words of Corey Goldman, which were shared with the congregation just recently when he and Ezra's sister Izzy returned from Israel last month. Corey writes, on October 7th, as the realization of what had occurred in Israel slowly came into focus, I, like many other Jews around the world, felt something deeper than shock, horror, pain, and empathy. I felt a need to be there, to be in my homeland, to stand alongside my people in the place that, crazy as it sounds to many, will always be my last stop. Indeed, as the proverbial October 7th bomb was still ringing in my ears, my instinct was to go and help defend the one place that I know as a Jew in the 21st century, that my family and I cannot be singled out or persecuted or denied the right to exist and to be, because we are Jewish. My connection to Israel, Corey writes, has long been, for lack of a better way of putting it, a place I have felt I belonged and had no need or reason to justify, no need to explain my history, my culture, my being. It is where I feel surrounded by a populace that feels exactly the same way. And so being a volunteer on this mission amplified this knowing. It reinforced my own sense of belonging, my own religious and cultural roots. It reminded me that I am a Zionist. This is an example, a beautiful, shining example of Bina, of the kind of heart wisdom that comes from returning to what we once knew, revealing it all over again, embracing it all over again, and carrying it with us at the core. And finally, that third category of knowing is da'at, a kind of divine insight, enlightenment. It's divine inspiration that springs from faith. And I'll share with you the words of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, one of the early Hasidic masters. Praise to God. Almighty God, I do not beg you to reveal to me the secret of your ways. I could not bear knowing. But show me one thing. Show to me more clearly and more deeply. Show me what this, which is happening at this very moment, means for me, and what it demands of me, and what you, ruler of the universe, are telling me by way of this moment. We are turning to God for this kind of understanding, this kind of insight and inspiration in ways that many of us haven't for some time. It comes from a very deep place of needing direction, needing God's nearness, needing God's inspiration, so that we do not lose our own humanity, so that we do not become so depressed and demoralized that we stop to rise to the occasion of being descendants and inheritors of Torah. I'll give one example of this faith-based knowing from this past week. I went to visit some new friends at Grace Church on the Hill in Forest Hill. I met some of our Christian neighbors at their invitation, and the minister asked a number of questions, and I answered them as honestly as I could. I'll be honest, I was withholding some because I didn't want to depress them too much. I could see on their faces that it was, they were receiving what I was saying in a heavy kind of way. The minister asked, how is your community doing since October 7th? What should we know about our Jewish neighbors? And so I told them. And when we opened it up for comment and further question, there were two examples of this amazing faith-based knowing. One was from a woman who really cried out in pain, in lament and in criticism of Christian Canadians. She said, "We are not doing enough. Our silence, our indifference is dangerous, and we know this from history." And she spoke it as a woman of faith. It was as if this da'at was coming through her mouth to all those in the room. And all I could say was, thank you for opening this conversation, which really is between your congregation and your minister to guide you. It's not for me to say. And then there was another example of this kind of da'at that came from a man who said, "I have faith in the Jewish people and I have faith in the state of Israel." And he said, "Look at Entebbe, and look how they brought the Ethiopian Jews and the Yemenite Jews and how they rescued the Russian Jews." He knew our story of contemporary Jewish history. He said, "Jews will find the way and Israelis will find the way." And on the one hand, I feel like saying, we aren't superheroes. We are human beings of flesh and blood. And on the other hand, as a person of faith, listening to a man of faith, I couldn't help but agree with him. We are an eternal people, and we do find a way. It can be hard, but with God to guide us and to inspire us with da'at, we can find a way. And so I conclude with this blessing once more. Baruch atah Adonai, praised are you, O God, who graces us, human beings, your creations. We are only flesh and blood, but you grace us with a measure of your knowing. Amen.